It's funny to hear you say demystifying the board though, because I would think that the board is one of the most simple training tools out there. And the mystery isn't so much as how the board works, but how you can hold on to the little holds. You know what I mean? It's like there's no mystery. You just have to have freakishly strong fingers and like really hang on tight. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, like I think learning how the board works takes, a minute where you're like, oh, the holds light up and then you grab them. The crux is actually holding the holds.
Yeah, true. Maybe it's a little bit like it's like Tetris, because you can learn how to play Tetris in like, a minute or two, but like mastering it takes forever. You could spend so much time on really working it out.
Yeah, actually, I mean, so speaking of, how much do you moonboard versus training for the moonboard? Because actually, and I asked this partially for my own curiosity, because the thing with moonboarding is that, you're having a good time benchmarking, you're making progress, and then you kind of hit your physical limits where you just like can't do the moves and you just can't hold the holds. And then you can't really just beat your head against the benchmarks that you can't do. It's like if you can't do the moves, you just can't really do the moves. Like, how do you get to the point that you can do the moves?
Yeah, true. So typically I moonboard 4 times a week. That's that's usually what I can get in, and it's not like a specific schedule because my schedule is still some weeks chaotic. Um, but yeah, I think when I reach a plateau, and I've given this advice to others, so I try to follow it myself. When I reach a plateau, like right now on the 2019 set, I still have some 11s, a 12 and a 13 that are like going to be long-term projects, like very difficult, very specific, really like one really targets your right shoulder in like a deep lock off. So I'm gonna have to train specifically for that. But instead of beating my head against it, like you said, I'll maybe take a step back, do some non-benchmarks, build my pyramid, take it down a couple grades, maybe do a volume session, or like a just some sort of challenge workout. Like I'll try to do like 9v9s, or something like that. um and if I'm really just feeling frustrated, I'll climb commercial sets, or I'll set something. I like to be creative with movement on the board, and it gives me a lot of satisfaction. So I can maybe take a step back, and if there's like there's a 12 by one of the DeWolf twins, and he's like, it's very hard left hand lock off for the end, like to the finish. So maybe I'll set something that's similar, or it'll inspire me in some way to create something maybe a little bit easier that I can share, that can help people on their way to it. Like it's going to help me push it out to the community.
Mhm. You mentioned something that sometimes if you're really stymied by something, you might just enjoy commercial sets for a bit, like it just which means climbing normal problems in a climbing gym, and that actually made me think about an experience I had. Was it 2 years ago when Daniel Woods was here in Vegas trying Return of the Sleepwalker, whatever, the V17 like mega sit thing that he spent like 2 months sieging in the desert, totally insane. But I remember him coming into the gym because it was raining or something. Basically, he just needed like a break from trying the hardest boulder in the world, and he went into the bouldering gym, did every single problem that was set, all first try, and then went to the moonboard to actually work out. And it made me realize that for those of you who are serious about training on the moonboard, commercial gyms just don't really offer challenges. And I was like, this is so crazy. And then actually just the other day, seeing you and Jonathan Seegers warming up in the gym, basically doing all the hardest problems that are set as a way to warm up to go over to the board. I was like, wow, it's really a whole different scale, because like for a boulder like me, I find plenty of challenge in the commercials. That's like I can just spend my whole session beating my head against problems that other people have put on the wall. And I'm like, well, that was pretty hard. I feel busted and ready to go home. But it seems like if you're climbing at the highest levels on the board, you really can't find that kind of difficulty anywhere else but the board.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I still have to check myself and make sure that I'm like getting on different terrain other than 40 degrees. Like that's the joke, is like, oh, like how do I do this? This is this is 20 degrees. I don't know how to climb on this angle. Like give me a straight 40 and I'm good. But no,
Yeah.
I try to make sure I at least keep certain things sharp. But yeah, to go more into that, I think what the board does a really good job of at all grades, not just like a really high end grade, is it engages like fingers and core right away, like right off the bat, and it kind of keeps them engaged throughout. I mean, it's, only a few moves, maybe at the most it's like 8 moves if you're traversing all over the board. But within that 8 moves or less, the fingers and core are engaged right from the ground. And I think that really helps to simulate what you're going to find if you are training on the board to go outside, which is what most people do. And to a certain extent, what I do too. I have outside projects as well. And the fact that right off the ground, I can be engaged in my core, in my shoulders, in my fingers, throughout. It's really valuable. And that's something that Jonathan and I have been talking about recently. We've been training a bunch on it together. He's training like pinches for a specific project in Spain, and we're able to find that. We're able to like more one-to-one mimic it than you would for a commercial gym set.
Unless you're setting the problems yourself, like actually setting simulators.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which in both of your cases you do. So
yeah, true.
Yeah. It is interesting that it's like when you're climbing at the most elite level on the board or in a gym, it seems like it's just a whole different sport in a way. It's like you're setting your own problems. I mean, you have a bunch of benchmarks on the Moonboard. Speaking of, I can't do some of your benchmarks on the Moonboard. They're really hard. But yeah, it's just such a different world. Like, I use the board casually as sort of a way to keep up some power, in order to climb outside better. But there just seems to be a gulf, like a big gap between the casual, like, oh, I use it to sort of, tap into power sometimes versus like really using the board. Like,
yeah, I think there can be. I mean, I remember you and I were training quite a bit a couple years ago, and it was cool. Like it's its own skill set, and I find it sometimes almost surprisingly when I will go outside. Like recently, I took a trip to Bishop and I was trying direction out there, and I could feel it right away. I was like, oh yeah, this is interesting. I'm able to tap into this board power a lot faster than maybe it takes to, like, as someone who works a lot, with a full-time job, climbs mostly inside. In the past, before board climbing, and focusing on it so intensely, I had maybe a little bit of a lag time when I was going outside to try hard boulders or my project. And I feel like that lag time has like diminished as I've climbed more on the board, because again, I think it's just so snappy, and that gulf you were talking about, I think, gets a little bit compressed, the more time you spend on the board. And then, going outside, if you only have maybe a couple weeks to go to Bishop or Waco or, wherever you want to go to do hard boulders,